Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the Divine Reality course. Now we're going to be moving on to another argument or addressing the problem of evil. So Islam's response to the problem of evil and suffering. Is God merciful? Now, this particular argument, the problem of evil, is probably the most often used argument against theism and even Islam, right? Most atheists, whenever they approach you, whenever they engage with you, their fundamental argument, maybe 95% of the time, when you ask them, well, what reasons you have to deny God, what reasons you have to not believe, this is the argument that they bring, the problem of evil and suffering. In a nutshell, which basically what they're saying is, if a good, loving God exists, then why is there evil and suffering? And because evil and suffering exist, therefore God does not exist. That's the sort of argument in a nutshell, right? There's many ways they formulate it, there's many ways they present it, and we'll go through some of the examples and different formulations of this particular argument. But this is the number one argument. And something we're going to hopefully appreciate by the end of this session is that Islam provides the most meaningful, the most comprehensive, the most powerful response to this particular argument, right? So that being said, just a few things we'll be covering in this session or these next set of sessions. The problem of evil and suffering, we're going to look at the logical form, and we're going to look at the evidential, or what I refer to as the experiential form of the argument. Islam's response to the problem, the daring assumptions that are made when presenting this as a problem, the spiritual, emotional and existential tools that Islam provides us in response to this issue, this problem. We're also going to be making a note on egocentrism and how that plays a role in those that promote or use this particular argument. We're also going to take a look at, transcending evil and suffering, the best of possible world. We're going to touch upon this idea of the best possible worlds. And also some key contentions like I didn't ask for this life and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's start off and let's firstly sort of read, if you like, how this argument was presented. So take, for example, David Hume. David Hume obviously was an empiricist, a rationalist, an Enlightenment philosopher, and the way he sort of stated this, he said, Epicurus's old questions are yet unanswered. Is he, referring to God, is he willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is impotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Whence then is evil? So essentially, Epicurus's old argument essentially is that if God is all powerful and all good, and you can say all loving, then why does evil exist? Is it that he is able to stop this evil and suffering, but he doesn't stop it, meaning he's all powerful, but that would also, from this perspective, mean he's malevolent. He wants you to suffer. He wants you to go through hardships and trials and be in pain. Or is it that he wants to stop this evil and suffering, but he can't, and therefore he is not all powerful? Is he both able and willing, but then why does evil exist? This is how it was formulated. This is how it was presented. Now, just to clarify and further sort of illustrate the logical form, the logical form tries to show a logical impossibility in the coexistence of God and evil, right? So, as it's stated, evil is a problem for the theist in that a contradiction is involved in the fact of evil on the one hand and belief in an omnipotence and omniscience of God on the other, right? This is the way some of these academics and atheists would refer to it. However, one thing I also want to sort of highlight here is that at best, what their argument does or could potentially do is highlight that that God, this creator that theists believe in, is an evil God or a bad God. Right? It's not, what I'm saying essentially, it's not an argument that formally or logically disproves the existence of God. Right? At best, it challenges the nature of God. Who is this being? Is he all good? Is he evil? At best, it can shift someone from this perspective. But as far as the belief in God or whether God exists, I don't think this argument itself disproves God's existence in any way, shape, or form. So the point is that the conclusion doesn't necessarily follow. So here's another formulation. If God exists, then God is all good, all powerful, and all knowing, and allows there to be evil in the world. If God is all good, then he will want to eliminate evil. If God is all powerful, then he can eliminate evil. If God is all knowing, then he is aware of any evil that exists. Therefore, God does not exist. This is another way they will formulate the argument. But here's a question, does this logically follow? Right? There seems to be a missing premise number 5, which is, if there is a being that knows about all evil, wants to eliminate evil, and is able to eliminate all evil, then that being would not allow there to be any evil in the world. This claim is postulating some form of logical necessity, right? That's the issue here. It's postulating some sort of logical necessity. All we have to do is highlight a mere possibility, that there may be a reason for an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good God to allow evil and suffering to exist. If there is a possibility that there is a reason behind why an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good God would allow evil to exist. If you can bring this possibility to the table, there may be a reason behind this, a wisdom behind this, then the argument breaks apart. Because the assumption is that there is no possibility. There is no possible reason behind an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good God to allow evil and suffering to exist. And this is an assumption. Right? Even if there's a possibility, and indeed we can postulate this on a surface level, even if there is a possibility, then this argument doesn't hold. All the theist needs to do in response to the logical problem of evil is highlight a possibility. A possibility of God existing and permitting evil. Thus, the theist here needs to say exactly why a given evil was permitted, but thus the theist here need not say exactly why a given evil was permitted, but instead can merely try to show it is possible there is a reason, right? The exact wisdom don't need to go into. The theist doesn't need to highlight the exact reason behind a particular evil or form of suffering, but all he has to do is just postulate, just highlight that there is a possibility, that there is a reason, a wisdom behind a specific occurrence of evil and suffering. And that is sufficient, right? So there is a possibility by virtue of understanding God's nature. He is the wise. There can be wisdom, a reason behind evil and suffering. And again, another thing I want us to appreciate and understand is that this argument can actually maybe present a problem for Christendom, right? Because according to Christian theology, generally speaking, the idea is God is all powerful, all knowing, all good, all loving. And they normally stop somewhere around about there, right? So unlike the Muslim perspective, the Islamic perspective, we know that Allah has many names and attributes, right? And all of his names and attributes are to be understood via his oneness. So we also know Allah is Al-Hakim, the wise. Now, if we just from an Islamic perspective bring this one more name and attribute of Allah to play here into the equation, it completely dismantles this argument, the problem of evil and suffering. Completely dismantles it. Why? Because if Allah is Al-Hakim, He is the wise, that means there is definitely a wisdom behind things that happen. There is a reason behind things that happen. And therefore there is a reason behind the evil and suffering that we perceive in this world. Right? Now just because we can't understand that wisdom, or we don't know that wisdom, or we can't articulate or highlight that wisdom, it doesn't mean there is no wisdom. Right? Again, we're just highlighting that this possibility does exist. And it's from the Islamic perspective, absolutely. From the Christian perspective, maybe not. Right? But because we know that Allah has many names and attributes, and He is also Al-Hakim, as well as being all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good, etc., that means that there is wisdom behind things that take place. So this is a very simple and powerful way of dismantling this argument completely. And that's sufficient. But we're going to obviously, expound upon this and go into a lot more detail. So brothers and sisters, I'm going to stop here. In the next section, we're going to be looking at the evidential form of this particular argument and sort of deconstructing that. But for now, what I want you to do is I want you to just sort of reconsider and reevaluate the points that we've just made. The argument of, or the problem of evil and suffering from an Islamic perspective is not a problem, because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has many names and attributes. He's also the wise. And all we have to do from our perspective is highlight the possibility where a good, all-powerful, all-knowing God allows evil and suffering to exist. If there's a reason, if we can just highlight that there's a reason, there's a wisdom behind an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good God to allow evil and suffering to exist, then that's what we have to do. That's as sufficient as it is. That's as easy as it is, and therefore the argument of problem, evil, and suffering falls apart from that logical perspective of that there is no God. Therefore, because evil and suffering exist. No, now we have what we're going to do over the next couple of sessions. We're going to expound upon from the Islamic perspective specifically as to what are these reasons? What could these reasons be? Right, and look at also some of the daring assumptions that are made by the proponents of this argument and deconstruct them too. So when you're ready, move on to the next section. Assalamu alaikum. So this is God merciful? New argument, the problem of evil, part 1. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to